Welcome to another episode of Iconoclast Insights. This morning I read a LinkedIn post explaining how to get AI sound like you. The trick was, let it interview you first. Have it ask you 15 questions about yourself, then write. 15. Not 10, not 20, 15. Two people asked the obvious question. One wrote, why 15? Another wrote, I have had better results with 25. 20 people cheered the original post anyway. Fire emojis. This changes everything. Nobody who cheered could tell you why 15 works and 14 doesn't. Neither, I suspect, could the person who posted it. That's not really a post about prompting. It's a number wearing effects clothes. And almost everyone let it walk right past them. Here's what makes this trickier than ordinary bullshit. Nobody involved is necessarily lying. The person who wrote 15 questions probably had one good session where it happened to work. That's an opinion. A hunch dressed up with a number to make it sound tested. The number is what does the damage. 15 sounds measured. 15 sounds like someone ran the experiment. Nobody ran the experiment. I sat in a vendor pitch yesterday and watched the same move, just with a bigger budget behind it. An email agent, save 90% of your time. A calendar agent, save 90% of your time. A lead scraping agent that pulls hundreds of prospects off Google Maps in minutes. 3 claims, 3 different problems, the exact same number. Nobody in that room asked why 90% kept showing up like it was the only number they owned. Then the vendor pulled out a study. 80% of AI implementation projects fail. Cited to a firm I'd never heard of. Doing research I couldn't locate afterward. Nobody questions that either. Not because the room was gullible, because the room had no way to check it, no time to check it, and, this is the part that matters, no social permission to be the one who stops the pitch to ask. I think that's the real mechanism. It's not that people can't tell the difference between an opinion and a fact. It's that questioning takes knowledge they don't have, confidence they haven't practiced, and a willingness to be the person who slows the room down. Take any one of those away and the opinion gets through unchallenged. Take away all 3 and it doesn't even register as a claim. It registers as information. Watch that fills the gap once nobody is checking the claim itself. It's never more evidence, it's authority borrowed from somewhere else. That same vendor mentioned their ISO certification. Planned. Not obtained, planned. Said in the same tone you'd use for something already on the wall. They mentioned multi-million euro projects I had no way to verify. They mentioned client names and former employees dropped in like credentials. I keep seeing this on LinkedIn too. Ex-Google, ex-Apple, ex-Meta. As if the prefix X were doing quality control. It isn't. Ex-Apple tells you nothing about what someone did there. They could have shipped an operating system. They could have restocked the vending machines. And it tells you nothing about why they are X in the first place. Nobody puts fired for underperforming in their headline. But statistically, some of these people were. Authority borrowed from a logo is not evidence. It's a substitute for evidence, offered to a room that's already decided not to ask for the real thing. And there's a part that connects it back to that LinkedIn post about 15 questions. Confidence is the only credential either of them needed. Nobody demanded the source. The delivery was the source. There's a pattern underneath both of these, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you are selling something that isn't built for the customer in front of you, something generic, something you need everyone to want, you need an argument for why they should want it. A real custom solution doesn't need that argument. It fits or it doesn't, and you can show your work either way. So here's the line I keep coming back to. If you need to manufacture demand, the product is the problem. This isn't new. Every industry that sells anything non-custom has always needed a story. What makes it sharper right now with AI specifically is the speed. The models are moving fast. They are available to everyone and almost nobody can keep up with what they can actually do versus what's being claimed for them. The gap between the pace of the technology and the pace of which people can verify claims about it is exactly the gap that gets filled with borrowed confidence. I talked a few episodes back about people wanting a solution that works, not the actual solution to their problem. This is the mechanism that supplies it. Works is fast and it's checkable in the moment. Did the demo run? Did the agent answer? Did the number sound impressive? Right takes longer and it means asking questions that make the room uncomfortable. Given the choice, most rooms take fast. I want to be honest about this because I've been the room that didn't ask. Years ago, I paid a few €1,000s for business coaching because it sounded exactly like what I needed. Confident pitch, confident presenter, a story that fit my situation a little too neatly. I used almost nothing from it afterward. The only thing I actually took away was the lesson. I hadn't asked the right questions before I paid. The second time was worse because I did ask. I was evaluating a piece of software. I won't name it because it's still a good product, still moving in a direction I respect. It's just drifted further from what I needed than I expected. I asked pointed questions before I committed. I didn't love the answers. There was hesitation in them, a few things that didn't quite add up. And I invested anyway because by then I'd built up enough trust in the people behind it to override my own doubt. It worked well for a while. Then the provider changed direction, mid-course, in a way I hadn't accounted for. I was left with a tool that couldn't adapt to what I actually needed anymore. That's the harder lesson, and it's the one I actually want you to take from this episode. Asking the question isn't the whole defense. You also have to respect the answer, then it's not the one you wanted. Trust is not a substitute for a bad answer. It just makes the bad answer easier to swallow. So here's what I ask you to carry out of this episode. And it's not complicated. Ask, says who? Not as a gotcha, not to be difficult in every meeting for the rest of your life, just as a reflex, applied to the claims that arrive dressed as settled fact. The 90%, the 15 questions, the 80% failure rate, the ISO certification that's still theoretical. Says who? Why 15? Is that true in every case or just in one they are pitching you? People push back on me with a version of this same question. They ask why they'd hire me when a vendor is already offering them a fully customized solution to the exact same problem. Fair question. My answer isn't that the vendor is lying. It's that I've been the guy who didn't ask and the guy who asked and ignored the answers anyway. And I'm trying to keep other people out of both situations. Usually the stakes are bigger than mine were. The pattern's identical. One question too many has never cost anyone as much as one question too few. Keep that in mind. That's it for today's episode of Iconoclast Insights. Next time someone hands you a number that sounds too precise to be made up, ask them where it came from and watch what happens in the room. Says who? See you in the next one.